All right, so I'm here with Dan. It's been 10 weeks since our session, and here's kind of a post-interview to talk about how he's doing now. So Dan, you're welcome to go into as little detail or as much detail as you want, but the first question is, what issues were you kind of dealing with and what struggles were you having? And then I'm going to ask, how has that changed since the session? So you can take it away from there.
Sure, thank you, Jordan. So a major issue for me before our session was that I was always worrying about what other people were thinking about me, and I was always worrying about their perspective whenever I was thinking about an experience we were having together or a relationship that we were in together, like a friendship or a romantic relationship or even like family relationships. And I really wasn't focused on my perspective as much as I should have been. I was more so focused on what the other person's perspective was and what they were thinking and how they were feeling about it. And I was basing my words and actions off of how I thought they wanted me to act and speak. And it was mostly based off of their perspective. And it was almost a little bit like I was paranoid about how other people were viewing me and what they thought about me instead of being focused on myself and being focused on how do I want to act and how do I want to speak and what type of relationships do I want to have with other people rather than what type of relationships do other people want to have with me. And so what's changed from our session about 10 weeks ago is I'm much better at being able to value myself and my perspective and how I feel about other people and events that happen. And in being able to value myself more and be more focused on what I want and what I think I've been able to understand how to get more out of what I want in life rather than being so focused about what other people want from me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you mentioned like what's the biggest change in terms of like when you went into the set is what did you expect going into the session to happen and kind of what like did your expectations for the session like were those met or were you kind of amazed? Were you like what did you think was going to happen? And if that question makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. I think you completely blew me away. You blew my expectations completely out of the water. When I was going into the session, my goal was to be very open-minded, and I really didn't know what to expect. You see, like you know how in movies you might see like a comedy might have a scene with a hypnotherapist, and they're holding up like a pocket watch, and they're trying to like hypnotize someone while they watch it sway from left to right.
Yeah.
And I figured there's no way it would be like that, but that was my only experience of seeing hypnotherapy is like in comedies or like on a movie or a TV show before that. And so I didn't realize that it was going to be as much of an internal conversation as it was. I kind of thought of our session as an internal conversation where I was talking things out and helping me make sense of my own life and experiences. And so this session was absolutely fantastic. It helped me 100%. My goal was to be open-minded, and you completely blew me out of the water with how awesome it was and how much it helped me. I figured it would be it was a little bit at first like a counseling session when you were getting to know me and learning more about my life and experiences so that you could help me better. So I guess to a certain extent, um, I figured you would have to learn more about my experiences and me as a person before you could help me. And so I would say the first I'd break it into two stages. So the first stage where was a little bit more like a counseling session where you were learning about me and my experiences. And then the second stage was where you were using the information that you learned about my life and experiences to help me talk myself through my internal dialogue.
Yeah, that's kind of so the way, yeah, typically we break it up like we have a pre-talk and then we actually do the hypnosis session. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. Trying to decide what else I want to ask. uh
Take your time.
I can always edit this part out later. Um
I
I'm
could
trying to
talk
think. So
about
so yeah, would you recommend, so in terms of who do you think would benefit from this type of hypnosis session?
I think people who are dealing with lots of stress and anxiety would benefit. I think people who are struggling with their self-confidence and their self-esteem could benefit from this. I think maybe those are four groups who I think would really, really benefit. I think hypnotherapy helps them the most, is those four groups of people. Because I think those groups of people, we're struggling with our internal dialogue the most, I think. And I think that hypnosis is going to help those four groups of people the most. Because I know if you have like a lot of anxiety or a lot of stress, a lot of it is external. Like it's caused by external factors that are not necessarily in your control. Like a lot of life is how you react to it rather than you making it happen. And so for stress and anxiety, being more confident in yourself and finding your inner peace more so will be able to help you overcome that stress and anxiety you feel. And for people who are struggling with their self confidence, or maybe they're struggling with their self esteem, I think being able to improve their inner dialogue will definitely make them raise their self esteem and increase their confidence. And that's really what it did for me was it definitely helped me increase my confidence and self-esteem because my confidence and self-esteem were just being battered by my internal dialogue because my internal dialogue was just all of these worries and stresses and anxieties about how other people were thinking about and experiencing me rather than me focused on how am I thinking about other people and how am I experiencing them. Also, I think anyone who has a childhood where they might have trauma associated with their childhood, everyone has like very different experiences. Like everyone's trauma can be different, but I think that what everyone who has trauma has in common is that it's something from their past and it's affecting them in the present. And it's something where they need to overcome their past to help themselves in the present and the future. And I think hypnotherapy can help people overcome the negative past and move on in the present and the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There was another question I came up with. Oh, we talked about, if you want to go into it, it's up to you, but you had a board where I think you had written down some affirmations or
Yeah,
something
I
like
can go
that.
get it.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Do you want me to read them to you?
Uh, yeah, I'm more, yeah, sure, we can do that.
1 second, I'm gonna
Got
get
it.
it real quick.
Okay.
All right, so I am gonna start out by reading these to you. So every
Okay.
day I get out of bed, and this is what I say to myself out loud while I'm stretching. I love myself. I am enough. My mom, dad, and sister love me. They want me to be successful. I can handle this. I will pass the CPA exam. I can give myself internal validation anytime I want. And so that's what I say to myself every day whenever I wake up and get out of bed.
Yeah, and how did that, if I recall correctly from us chatting before, you added some of those after our session?
Yes, I did. So the part where I say, I love myself, I am enough, and the part where I say, I can give myself internal validation anytime I want. Those are the two parts. So that's half of it. The first half I made up a few years ago, but those two parts I added after our session together.
And why did you add those specifically?
I added those specifically because I wanted to remind myself that I'm confident and I am enough. Like, I love myself, and I wanted to remind myself that I don't need to seek validation from other people in order to validate myself and be proud of myself. I am proud of myself the way I am. And so
And
it was another way for me to always remind myself that I don't need to focus on other people and other people's experiences of me. I need to focus on myself and my experiences from my perspective.
it seemed like you were struggling with doing that prior to our session. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I was so focused on other people's experiences of me and what they thought about me and said about me that I was basing a lot of my words and actions in my life off of getting validation from other people rather than doing things because I want to and they validate myself.
And how aware were you prior to our session of you doing those behaviors? Like, were you really aware of that, or were you a lot more aware of it like after our session was done? Yeah, do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. So before our session, I would, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say 10, you're fully aware, 1, you're not aware at all. Maybe I was a 2 or a 3. So I was almost not aware. And then after our session, I was up to like probably a 9 or a 10. I was completely aware. I was able to look at my like past experiences and decisions and realize that I wouldn't have ever done or said a lot of those things unless I was chasing validation from other people.
To be clear, you were aware that you had been doing. You were much more aware that that is how you used to behave. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's that's what I learned during our session.
Yeah. Is it also fair to say that you didn't realize how much, like, you said you were aware of the feeling, you weren't aware of how much it was affecting you either?
Yes, I wasn't aware of the extent to how serious of a problem I had.
Hmm. Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Um, that's kind of why we do these sessions, is to try and help guys out with that kind of stuff. We'll probably wrap it up here, but is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
Your session has really helped me focus so much more on myself and what I want. A lot of times, I used to be in a state of mind where if people would get mad at me or they'd have like some type of displeasure with like something I said or did, I'd freak out and I would try to do anything I can to like walk back my words or actions and like correct myself, if you will, in their eyes. But now I just let people feel how they feel and think what they think and say what they say. And I don't let it affect how I want to live my life and how I want to act and speak. And so I'm able to focus much more on myself now. And I think anyone who wants to focus much more on themselves can benefit from hypnotherapy with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate you taking the time today. Um, yeah, cheers.
Thank you, Jordan. It was a pleasure you having me on.